Hello and welcome to the Ultrawizard Ramble podcast. This is episode number 10, and I'm your host, Patrick Reagan. And today, with me, I've got MC Lars and Schaffer the Darklord. Hey, welcome, guys.
Hi.
What's up, Patrick?
Yeah, nice to have you guys. I mean, I've been following along for years with both your music. Me and Lars over the pandemic exchanged a little bit back and forth about a few albums, bought some tapes off him. Got really into his music, and in more recent times, Schaffer, I've listened to some of your concept albums and really enjoyed just following along with what you guys have been up to. So I'm excited today to unpackage a little bit about each of you and your relationship, some of your touring together, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
That's great.
Awesome. So first and foremost, tell our audience a little bit about yourselves. Maybe we'll start with you, Schaffer, and sure. We can just kind of talk about how you got into what you do and go from there.
All right. My name is Schaffer the Darklord. I'm a rapper. I've been doing this for 20 years. I started out in San Francisco. I was a drummer in metal bands. And then I'd had this kind of side project, like a 4-track side project where I was recording rap songs. And eventually my interest in that, as soon as I put it on stage the first time, I kind of lost interest in playing drums in the metal bands anymore. And also 20 years ago, I moved to New York City, and I've been friends with MC Lars most of that time.
Awesome. Good stuff. Lars, let's get a little bit of background on you, where you're from. I know you're up in the same region now as Schaffer, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm from California. I grew up in the Oakland Hills, and I started rapping because I found it was very hard to organize bands to come rehearse in my parents' garage. So I got into hip hop extensively in college, and then studied abroad, and then just got really into promoting and putting on my own shows, and started sampling bands and opening for bands in the pop punk world, and then kind of fell into the nerdcore category in 2006. By the way, it's Frontalot's birthday today. I know it's not airing on his birthday, but Frontalot is 50 today, which is very momentous. The genre is just going on. So that's tight. So, and then I met Schaffer because we did a show in Boston, and I already liked his music, and I liked his personality. And it was just kind of cool. I mean, the cool thing about hip hop is that it allows you to merge with so many other genres. By its postmodern genesis and definition, it is like a mercurial genre, which makes it never boring. You know what I'm saying? So totally. That's why I like doing hip hop. Yeah.
So up in New York now, I mean, what's your community like? Do you guys interact with a lot of other rappers? I mean, I like to follow along with the Arm & Hammer guys. I mean, of course, MF Doom is huge up there, right? And grew up listening to I grew up skateboarding, listening to MF Doom. Wu-Tang Clan, the early solo projects of RZA, and I just have always loved New York City rap. I mean, does it still have that energy? Do you still feel the community up there kind of encapsulates what was going on in the 90s? Has it evolved? What's it feel like for you guys?
I think it's definitely evolved. I cannot speak too much to what it's like at present day because ever since COVID, I didn't really recover from COVID as far as being a shut-in is concerned. So in New York, I'm mostly hanging out in my apartment in Queens and just making music all the time until I go on tour.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So I'm not quite as active in New York City as I was before the pandemic. But if I'm speaking to what the New York City hip hop community was like 4 years ago, yes, it's heavily evolved.
Yeah, awesome.
I think, Patrick, it's like when you go to New Orleans or Chicago, there's something in the energy of the place where these distinct American art forms have evolved. And New York having this amazing history, being an old, with quotes, old American city, and having gone through all these remixes of itself with each successive generation. I would say that New York still has the hip hop vibe more than the Bay Area does. I feel like the Bay Area, it has there's people like E40 and stuff doing cool stuff, but New York, you just are around so many more people that you'll see a cool graffiti piece up on the wall, or you'll hear it coming out of a car. It just feels Like that legacy is always there. And it was the product of these people, the people who created it needing to have a voice and needing to express themselves. And New York is a city of urgency where either you get things done or you just get crushed under the tires of a truck. And like, you feel that. It's like, yeah, that and I love being in New York and like listening to hip hop on my AirPods, even if I'm just walking around or running in New York. Like that's always fun, you know?
Yeah, New York's always had that kind of vibe where it's like, it really like if you especially if you're a transplant here, the city is like becomes this sentient beast that really challenges this premise of how badly you want to live here, because it's just an endless series of struggles and setbacks to make sure as a way of keeping the population down. And then periodically it just bestows these moments of magic upon you to remind you that like, oh, this really is a magical place and I really do want to stick it out for this. But you got to get some bruises before that.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's kind of like, it's the evolution of everything you're talking about, Lars, right? Like you take everything about New Orleans, you move it to New York, jazz becomes something different. Jazz eventually like leads to hip hop, right? Like I think you have that vibe there that is similar to what I experienced in New Orleans as like a tenor guitarist, washboard player. Like you have just like the world moves differently, right? Like Savannah, Georgia, very slow pace. Like you get off the plane in New York, though, for me as a visitor, you get on the train, it's a totally different vibe, man. Things move so differently, and I love it. I love it for what it is in that way, you know?
That's cool.
Yeah, word.
So, Schaffer, you have a little bit of a connection, it sounds like to me at least, to blues and jazz in your album that's got the big black cover with your St. James Infirmary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of one of my favorite tunes I've heard of yours, man, just because I have that connection with blues and jazz, and I just think St. James Infirmary is one of the coolest tunes.
Oh yeah, I grew up as soon as I could play an instrument, I took up the drums and I played in jazz school jazz band and marching band, and continued trying to keep those skills sharp like beyond school, and then of course like played in a number of math rock bands and metal bands. But I always some of those old standards, specifically St. James, specifically the Cab Calloway version, I've always been very, very close to my heart.
Cool. So with a lot of your covers, Schaffer, you have kind of reference to punk rock, whether it's Ramones or Big Black. I mean, were these staples for you growing up? Like I know for Lars, like punk rock was a huge staple, right? Like eventually like working on the Warped Tour, Lars, was it the same for you?
Absolutely. And it was just absolutely cherished, because I grew up in the Midwest in a small rural town, hundreds of miles away from any kind of culture. So as soon as my friends and I got driver's licenses, we would drive to places like Des Moines, Iowa, or Omaha, Nebraska. And that was the first time we ever really had access to record stores and going to shows and skate parks and all of the kind of like punk rock culture that I couldn't get in the middle of a cornfield. So yeah, growing up, I would just buy just everything, anything I'd heard, if I'd heard of it, or if I thought the album cover looked cool, I would just gobble it up every time I would go there. And so many of those bands from that era, from the early 90s, well, and before, because bands like Dead Kennedys were defunct at that point, but they were absolutely crucial to my evolution as a musician.
And for you, Lars, I mean, punk rock's always been a huge part of what you do. I mean, what you do is post-punk as well, right?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing like talking about this, because like the legacy of music, when it's real, it transcends generations. And it's interesting to hear that like back in the day, you'd have to go somewhere, Schaffer, you'd have to go to like Omaha or something to hear Fugazi. And like for me, it was like Oakland. Growing up there was a lot of culture and a lot of music coming through, but I was young when I lived there. And then when I was in 5th grade, my family moved to Monterey, which is more rural and south. And so I didn't end up going to shows till I was a little bit older, but I always liked punk because there's no rules, right? And post-punk is like, not only are there no rules like with the energy, there are no rules with the aesthetic. You can like rebuild from scratch. Yeah. So I love that, and that's why I kind of there's a group that Schaffer and I both like called Grand Buffet that we both open for, and they're a Pittsburgh hip hop group. They don't really tour so much now, but they would call themselves post rap, which I thought was tight. So I was like, okay, post punk laptop rap. That's kind of how I came up with that idea, because it was like, what? Yeah, 2003. That felt so futuristic. Now it feels kind of retro.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, wow. All right, so you guys meet like, what year did you guys meet in? What year was that?
2006, 2007.
Okay.
March 2006, I think.
Okay, so
Oh,
I assume guys, like, you've done a lot of touring together, right? Like, I know about a few of them. I know about like the Four Eyed Horseman stuff with Megaran, right? Like, I mean, infinite inspiration from each other, I have to assume, right? Like, has it just been a wild ride touring with each other? And
yeah.
I been to Europe.
Yep. I've toured with Lars more than I have anybody else in my career. And I think that even if there hadn't been all of the Four Eyed Horseman tours, I'd still probably would have toured with Lars the most, because we've just spent a lot of time on the road together. And it is inspiring to be on the road with him and like other peers of ours, because we get to find out what everybody else is listening to and what they're working on, and get new perspective. I love touring with Lars. He's so much fun. That guy's so much fun to be on the road with. And
that's nice, Mark.
It's true. I'm usually like grumpy and pouty, and you're always a good time.
You know, it's funny, Patrick, like Schaffer and I have this interesting Venn diagram of like punk rock, and we both also like these same underground prank call tapes of like the 90s and 80s. So
are you talking Jerky Boys and this kind of stuff, like everything that jumped off of this? Or
yeah, like Jerky Boys, there's this thing, what was it, the Seattle phone pranks?
Yeah,
that's another one.
Neil Hamburger calls.
Neil Hamburger, and Schaffer will quote them, but like, and it's like they're so underground that it's not. I don't know a lot of people who have that same understanding and the same love for Star Wars. It's like we're related, but we're not, and so there's always stuff to talk about. I mean, one of the most touching things we did last year on tour was we went to the crash site of the United Flight 93 in Pennsylvania, I think. And it was interesting to like have a moment, like a serious moment on tour, and to talk about like, what does it mean to be an American, and what does it mean to be like an American artist, indie artist, in a world where like all that stuff is so politicized. And we just had like a heartfelt moment, like kind of thinking about those people and what it was like, and like the bravery it takes to like carry on after hard things happen. You know, like moments like that like you only have on tour that I'll never forget. So it's, I also like touring with Schaffer because we both make money together, and he's very easy to deal with. He's always upbeat, and like there's never ego, and he's not like a diva about how to organize the van. Not that anyone else is, but you feel me, Patrick. Like you do so much. The people you, wait, Patrick, I think you're muted.
Okay, the van energy is really important, right? Like, not only the energy, but like if the space is too disorganized, or if someone is too meticulous in the van, it's a fine line, right? Because you're living in this vehicle with you guys, maybe a few less like instruments, but lots of gear, right? Mm-hmm. When you're in a van with two dogs, an upright bass, a banjo, man, like it's really important. Like, how meticulous are the people that you're traveling with versus like, is it too incredibly disorganized?
Yeah, I think the two of us, I think we've gotten we've found a good balance, because we've done it. We've spent so many hours and miles together on the road together that like I may lean towards being more OCD and more meticulous about organization, but I also like am aware that like sticking to that rigidly is not going to help any dynamic in the van, and also doesn't really help me to be that rigid all the time. Lars might do things like a little bit looser at times, but like it works because we meet each other like in the middle. We just kind of like meet each other in the middle in so many things, in terms of like business, and in terms of touring, and in terms of music creation. And I just think that like that the way that we pack the van also is just like another part of that we've just kind of mastered after doing it so many times.
I'm always just like, let's go, throw the stuff in there. You'll get to the venue, and there's always like 7 hours at the venue where you have nothing to do. So like, You know what I mean?
It's
Don't
true.
spend 7 hours
Yeah.
at the hotel
Yes.
organizing it
Yes.
because like there's so much. Anyway,
We'll
No,
see what
that's-
kind of time we have on the back end. You know, on the back end when we're at the venue 4 hours before we expected, then we can do some organization.
Yeah.
I get it. So
yeah.
of all the tours that you guys have done, it seems like you've pushed the Four-Eyed Horseman in more recent times like a whole lot. Like, has that been a really important tour for you? Touring as that like quartet, and like what has that been like?
We did a number of tours with the four of us, with the two of us plus Mega Ran and MC Front a lot. We did a number of tours before the pandemic, but during the pandemic we just kind of like joined forces and did a lot of monthly live streaming shows together. So
Okay,
I feel like the first tour that we did after, well, I guess it really wasn't post pandemic, but even though we keep saying that, but in fall of 2021, it was our first time, all of us, for any of us, getting back on the road again, and that felt pretty important to be with the four of us because we'd all really bonded during lockdown. And yeah, we're all such old friends and we have such a great time together. But that said, if I were only able to go on the road again with one of them, it would definitely be MC Lars.
Yeah, awesome.
So thanks, Mark. Yeah.
So now, like, what you guys are working on something together. What's the scope of the project like? What the project you're currently working on?
So we wanted to do a theme record, and you know, a lot of the nerdcore content is about like nostalgia and pop culture. So we were like thinking, what is one of the most big, interesting topics we could talk about? And we went to Disney World at the end of our tour right before the pandemic. So we were on the Haunted Mansion. So we were like, well, what if we did a record about the Haunted Mansion? And then we're like, well, what if we did a record about Disney, all the dark themes of Disney? And we kind of wrote the record fast, Schaffer, like in a month or two. Like we wrote it really quick, recorded it quick.
Yeah, over the summer.
And it's 12 songs. I forget, 11 songs. And I'm really proud of it. It's called 999. And we're starting to leak the singles. It will be out early, like probably January. But the Kickstarter fans are going to get it in a few days.
Nice.
Did I say anything? Did I miss anything more, Schaffer?
No, I think you got it. No.
Cool.
Yeah, we took this idea. We had such a great time on this ride together during our like during our before times tour victory lap. We started with that. We started with Lars's suggestion, and then it just kind of grew into like just all the dark, upsetting, occult things that we could find scattered throughout the Disney universe, which are not very hard to look for. They're everywhere. So if anything, we had a hard time like whittling down our list of potential concepts. And it was I don't know, we did the first single like a few months ago, but then the rest of the songs we just kind of wrote like one after another over the summer. We got like really into a flow, and it just kind of banged everything out pretty quickly.
I think we'd written the single and we hadn't released it, and we were like, this is good. We should do a full project, because it was almost like a test of it would work. And I've never done that necessarily, where you do a song from an album to promote an album you haven't even finished.
I haven't either.
So that was cool. Either. The pressure's on, once you say it's the first single of the album. Where's the record? Well,
well, it's almost done.
Eventually,
in process, right? Eventually. So what can you tease? What can you tease to the public? Let's say that this comes out towards the end of December, middle of December here. What were some of the things that you explored that you decided not to go with, I guess? Can you talk about that?
Yeah, there's a few songs we were working on that we didn't end up putting out. Like one of them was this question of like, how big is the Disney universe? Is it all Star Wars? Is it all Muppets? Or is it just main Disney? And like, I wanted to do a song about the Muppets Christmas Carol and the death of Tiny Tim and what that means, to lose a kid, like very serious stuff like that. And that's pretty dark. And Schaffer, you had some other ideas of too.
Like once we decided that it was none of these properties that like Disney had bought up, so no Marvel and no Star Wars and no Muppets. once we like narrowed it down to that, I tried to like focus a lot of my songs on specifically like classic Disney, like anything that was like made before 1990, let's say. So I was really looking at like older properties, and I really wanted, because I am an aging Gen Xer, I really badly wanted to write a song about the movie The Black Hole that came out 79 or 80. It was like Disney's attempt to make a live action sci-fi movie in response to Star Wars.
Oh,
it's got Anthony Perkins in it, and it's dark, and it's got a really weird ending. And that was the one song that like I really kind of had my heart set on, and then eventually just abandoned because it wasn't really working out. But again, to reiterate that one point, there was no shortage of like spooky occult Disney stuff to like select from, even after we started making edits.
Sure. Very cool. Well, it's exciting. So the first single, you've teased it. Have you teased the first one?
Yeah, it's called No Windows, No Doors, and it's about the Haunted Mansion, and it's about it's kind of a metaphor for depression. That was kind of my idea for it. Like when you're stuck in a house that has no windows and no doors, that's kind of what depression feels like. And the hook, you know, in the beginning of the Disney ride, there's a guy who's like, he says, there's no way you can get out, but you can go my way. And then there's a guy hanging from the roof because he kills him. It's like so dark. So we put that into the chorus, but Schaffer made it like kind of funny and less creepy. The only way to escape is through one unspeakable act. I like that line because it's not clear. The death is how you get out of the mansion. So that's the first single. And then I think the next one, we have so many. There's one called Rated G for Trauma. That was Schaffer's idea. That I think will be the next single. Schaffer, you wanted to talk about that one? I really like that song.
So like any kind of like, if we're doing like tribute material, so many of the songs on the album tribute a specific Disney movie. Like there's a song that discusses a certain part of like the Peter Pan universe, and a song that discusses a specific part of the Pinocchio universe. So once we had like a number of these songs, we just kind of wrote a song that would like reference a ton of other Disney properties in one track, because a lot of territory hadn't been covered. So from talking to friends, I realized that everybody, regardless of their age and what generation they grew up in, everybody has a memory of something they saw in a Disney movie that they would link to some sort of like traumatic childhood experience. Like everybody saw something when they were young that they saw maybe when they were a little too young, that was from the studio that was ostensibly making family entertainment. So I just gathered up all of them, and all of the ones I could think of, all of the things that are most typically cited as traumatizing for people. And we ended up, I don't even know how many are in that song, like 40, 50, some references to specifics. It's not just like the saying, oh, this movie was traumatic. No, the specific moment when this animal parent died, or whatever it may have been. It really kind of like brought into focus just how much dark material there really is from this studio.
So cool. I love the concept, guys. I think, I mean, a lot of our audience in general, and I mean, I'm sure a lot of your audience, like you've got other threads in records that you've written in that world too, right? Like you've done the Mandalorian thing, right?
Sure. Yeah, we did.
And I've done like 6 or 7 Roger Rabbit songs. One of them was with Cool Keith, and then Schaffer and I have another Roger Rabbit song, but there's one on this album where the Weasels talking about how it's like a posse track with some other rappers, JT Music, Stupendium, MC Snacks, and it's how we're going to each decimate a certain popular Disney character. So the Roger Rabbit, I'll probably keep going back to that my whole life because I love that movie.
I wrote years ago, I wrote a song about the Wizard of Oz that's really very violent too. And I think I've enjoyed taking these things that are on the surface very kind of colorful and friendly and accessible and safe, and then finding what's terrible in them and then kind of amplifying that. And then for this project, we did that, but I feel like specifically we'd have to like zoom in on one little part of it, but then also make that concept kind of broad enough and vague enough that the themes of it would still read to an audience that might not be familiar with the material that we're referencing. So it works as there's a ton of Easter eggs in a song if you've seen this particular movie, and if you haven't, it's still like a pretty interesting like exploration of dealing with grief, for example. So I feel like all of those
Awesome.
other songs that I've done in that kind of vein before were just warm-ups for this record.
Awesome. Well, guys, it's been really cool to hear about the record. Lars, you've mentioned Kickstarter a couple of times in terms of like where people can become involved, maybe get the album early. Is that still open to the public? Will it be by mid-December when this cast launches?
The Kickstarter's wrapped up, but we'll have it all on our sites, like Bandcamp, and we'll have like some extra merch and stuff. And we're going on tour. We're doing a US tour in May and June. So, well, if you missed Kickstarter, we'll have the merch at the shows. But yeah, thank you for asking about that.
Yeah, are you gonna have some tour exclusive stuff? Like
yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
love it.
So that'll be cool.
All right, next question. Are you coming through Savannah, Georgia area? Are you coming to Orlando? Or I mean, you've got to be, right?
Not really
Well,
sure yet.
I would love to. I've never played Savannah, but I would love to. I don't know where we're going to be specifically, but that would be cool.
Maybe I'll have to help you guys on it, just in terms of finding a venue that would be 600 capacity or 300 capacity. I mean, we've got a plethora of different venues around that would be fitting.
Thank you.
Someone
That's
like
cool.
Biggie and the Kids Table, or like Real Big Fish came a couple years ago. Just like kind of mid-range size in terms of the theater that might be a good fit for you. I don't know, 600 or 800.
That's tight. That's what's up. We know the right guy. That's you.
Yeah, I guess at least the door in, right? At least the door in. Yeah, I'd recommend it as a great layover, guys. If you were playing Charleston, or you were doing Charlotte, hooking down to Atlanta, it's just like such a great time over here. We'll hook it up. We got kayaks, and we'll take you out on the water and treat you right.
Kayaks?
That's tight. That's tight.
What do you think? Yeah. We'll have to get you close to the region at least.
Thank you. That's cool.
Awesome. Well, guys, I really appreciate it. Where can people find out more about you? I know we're on a little bit of a timetable here today, or we're probably close to having to cut this one a little short, around 30 minutes. Lars, where can people find you?
MCLars.com. Just all my stuff's linked there, and we're both on Patreon, so that's the well that keeps going every month. And yeah, those are my main sites.
Yeah,
where I would send people.
Mine's the same. SchafferTheDarklord.com. So just a collection of links to all of my social media, including my Patreon, which is very active.
Awesome. You can also find both these guys on Bandcamp, where they've got at least some of their records up. I think, Schaffer, you've got a ton of your stuff up. Your most recent concept album, I really enjoyed it, especially like you going under stasis and being locked in the pod and trying to get out. So, yeah, check these guys out on Bandcamp. Try to make it a Bandcamp Friday so they get all the funds. And guys, thanks so much for giving your time. Enjoyed the conversation today, and looking forward to talking to y'all next time.
Awesome. Thanks, you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Break a leg tonight. Peace.
See ya.
Bye.